Now, majority of learners in the country have been cut off from the ongoing broadcast and e-learning organized by the Ministry of Education because they cannot access internet or broadcast equipment such as television sets and radios. These are among the issues the Senate was discussing as the Ministry of Education was urged to look into how they will include all the disadvantaged children so that they do not lag behind in their learning.
We engaged the KICD and KBC to understand what they are doing to ensure that the children of the poor and the children of the common man in this country are able to continue learning. Unfortunately, in this country, it is the children at Brookhouse, at Sabis, at Braeburn, at Braeside, and other English-sounding schools with English-sounding names. Those are the children who are learning. The majority of the 15 million children in this country are sitting at home idling. We are risking a generation that would be driven into illiteracy, will be driven into disease, would be driven into poverty. Could the committee find out why, after spending 100 billion Kenya shillings to provide laptops for children in the Republic, we cannot continue to provide electronic and virtual learning to the children of this Republic?
Children in the ASAL areas, like Isiolo, are not learning at all. Some of us have tried to help within what we can, and we've approached people like Safaricom to give toll-free numbers to do what we can, but that's a drop in the ocean.
Mr. Speaker, realistically, we must accept there is no education going on. We might aspire and say, oh, we want to use internet and whatnot, but there is none. The reality that we must face is that the quality of education this year cannot be compared to any other year. Only education is happening in schools. The TV, if you tune in, it will show you class 7 English, then tomorrow it will be class 2 geography. Then, you know, it is not consistent. There's no curriculum being followed that is proper. And so we must get to a point as leaders, because leadership includes facing reality, that certain very radical measures and pronouncements need to be made about this year's education calendar.
The government has the KBC Transmission Center, but the interface between the digital transmission center in KICD and the KBC, one is analog, the other one is digital. The KICD is digital, the KBC is analog. And therefore, even contemplating of school transmission study through the KBC, through radio and television, it's not possible because the farthest you can go, Mr. Speaker, is within the 100 kilometers of Nairobi.
The East African Cabinet Secretary, this is Adan Mohamed, has dismissed provincial commissioners from Tanzania who purported to stop cargo movement from Kenya into Tanzania as retaliation to Kenya's move to close its borders. Terming this statement as a mere talk, CS Mohamed said this while appearing before a parliamentary committee. And we're all joined by Vincent Odor, who actually was at that particular meeting today. Vincent, if you can hear me, good afternoon. You can actually just give us an update of what you had. What were you learning?
Absolutely, I'm just from the virtual meeting a few minutes ago, and what really happened is that the East African Cabinet Secretary Adan Mohamed was appearing before the Senate Committee on National Cohesion and Integration or Regional Issues, and basically members of Parliament wanted to know the status of cargo movements, especially when it comes to other regions surrounding Kenya in terms of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda and Burundi. And the question whereby, the provincial commissioners from Tanzania had vowed, to stop cargo movement from Kenya into Tanzania in retaliation to what Kenya decided to do to close its borders with Somalia and Tanzania. Adan Mohamed has termed those statements as what I can use, and if I can use his words, as rubbish, saying that the provincial commissioners are just trying to speak tough so that they can be seen to be working, especially by their boss, who is the president of Tanzania. And according to CS Adan Mohamed, is saying that ever since right now, as we are speaking, cargo from Kenya is moving into Tanzania, and is saying that Kenya as a country has engaged in diplomatic channels to really try and sort the matter out, because he's arguing that especially when it comes to provincial commissioners from the region, he's saying that they got the Kenya's move or statement wrong, because they are saying as a country, Kenya has not stopped any cargo movement into Kenya. The only thing it has stopped is the movement of people, but cargo movement is still on based on the WHO or the MOH guidelines that were put across. And he's saying that they are going to engage with the president of Tanzania to basically clarify on what they meant when they decided to close its borders with Tanzania. And CS is arguing that when it comes to Kenya and Tanzania, and when you look at the movement of cargo between these two countries, it is in the favor and interest of Tanzania, because the CS is saying that when it comes to cargo moving from the Namanga side, from the Tanzania side into Kenya, there are 120 vehicles that always move from the Namanga side of Tanzania into Kenya, compared to Kenya, whereby there are only 20 vehicles that normally move into Tanzania per day. And therefore, he's arguing that the issue to do with border movement, it is in their favor, the Tanzanians. And therefore, this is a matter that they are going to really handle through the diplomatic channels. Another thing that came up during that virtual Senate meeting is that members wanted to know, because the provincial commissioners from Tanzania, our government officials from Tanzania were arguing that there are some truck drivers who tested negative as far as COVID-19 is concerned while in Tanzania, and when they cross the border into Kenya and they are tested, they turn out again to be positive, and they were questioning the authenticity and credibility of the tests that are being done in Kenya, arguing that maybe Kenya is using other unorthodox method to try and prevent their cargo movement into the country. And the CS said that that is basically a perception matter, and he is arguing that if the Tanzanians want to really to prove the kind of tests that are being done in Kenya, they can do the same, and they have no any restriction or hesitance on that. And they're saying that if Tanzanians feel that basically the tests that are being done in Kenya are not true, then they are open to the Tanzanian authorities to be able to do the same tests to verify what has been got in Kenya. And those are a number of things that really came up. And what we know right now, the CIA is saying that the cargo is still moving from Kenya and Tanzania, because they are saying there were a number of traffic jam or trucks piled up at the Namanga border. And he's saying that that is because of the test that is undergoing at that place, because he's arguing that most truck drivers from Tanzanian side at Namanga had not undergone any COVID-19 testing, and therefore the process of testing is what has caused the heavy traffic experience at the Namanga border between Kenya and Tanzania. That is it for now. I'm taking you back to studio.
Many thanks indeed, Vincent Odward there, with that very comprehensive report on what is happening at the border point. We know that is one of the biggest flashpoints of transmitting also COVID-19 into the country as well. We'll keep on following and putting tails on that story also later in the day. Now, police in Kaloleni constituency in Kilifi County have heightened surveillance in all roadblocks to cut the supply of hard drugs in the sub-county. This is after police officers in Mariakani police station nabbed 5,231 big rolls of bang and 12 sachets of cocaine in 2 locations within Mariakani town on Monday. The cocaine was nabbed in a car wash located at a local club within the town, while the bang was discovered after a tip-off that someone was selling the drugs in Misufini area. Police managed to arrest the suspects at his house and found the drugs in the said house. According to Kaloleni OCPD Ezekiel Chepkwony, the bang has a street value of 1.03 million shillings, while the cocaine is valued at 3,600. The suspect is said to be a student in one of the Kenyan universities. Police fear that a large amount of the drugs could have already been sold to residents. The police have now launched a search on the town's roads, saying that the drugs are being transported on motorbikes.
Kwa hivyo tunapoteza vijana ambao wanatakana kujenga taifa kwa kujiingiza katika utumizi wa mihadarati. Na vile vile nataka niwaonye wale wote ambao wanaleta mihadarati hapa Kaloleni kwamba siku zao zimefika.
The National Environment Management Authority says it is closing in on manufacturing plants in the South B area that have been releasing illegal amounts of toxic fumes into the air. NEMA has since last week been stationed in the estate, measuring the air quality in the area. This comes after residents at Eagle Plains Estate petitioned NEMA to look into the matter after they claimed residents in the area were getting sick following exposure to the fumes, especially young children. Last year, NEMA shut down several plants in the area following an investigation that found that factories were emitting toxic gases that led to residents seeking medical attention.
Because this estate is actually in the precinct of the industrial area, we also want to look at the pollutants that actually impact the air quality within this residential area. We are doing twofold, basically here to get the quality levels of air within this estate and also to know where these pollutants are coming from.
I stand under the Article 42 of the Constitution, which clearly says that it is my right as a citizen of this republic to clean air and safe environment. It's not my business as a resident to know where the pollution comes from. It's for NEMA, who's the statutory, they're mandated by the Constitution and by all these other things to figure it out. So what we are demanding as an estate is simple. We want to know the source of this pollution.
Residents of Kilera in Meru County are counting losses after stray elephants invaded their farms last night, destroying their crops. The farmers from the area say they were dependent on the crops, which they had invested in heavily. The residents say the invasion of their farms by the Jumbos was a double tragedy, as they are already dealing with effects of the COVID-19 and they had already lost a section of their crops from locusts. The residents now want the government to compensate them for the damage as well as distribute relief food in the area. The elephants are from the nearby Meru National Park.
The elephants, they came just last night when everybody was asleep. And they cleared everything that was in the garden, including the maize and the beans. So we had the government to assist us because we depend on those crops that they have eaten to educate our children, to feed them.
Na hata last year walikuja kwa mashamba yetu wakavamia wakula mahindi yote, hata usiku vile wamekanyaga marawe, na hapa kuna kitu kingine tunasaidia naye. Kwa hivyo tunaomba serikali ijaribu kusunga hizi ndovu sizikuye kwa mashamba yetu tena, kwa sababu ndovu ikipitia kwa shamba inarudia hapo mara mingi, mara kama 5.
Right, time for me to slake my thirst. Don't go away, much more coming up on the other side of the break.
If taking care of someone with intellectual disability such as autism, maintain high levels of cleanliness and ensure their movements happen only when absolutely necessary. Wahenga walisema hakuna kazi ngumu na hakuna kazi rahisi. Watu kwa ground wakauliza, umejaribu mjengo? Take a moment and think about that. Kazi ya mjengo. The fundi, arguably the literal definition of a hard worker. Imagine building all these houses to perfection. What does it take to be a good fundi? Do they dream of having such houses? How selfless. Show me the best house in the country, then show me the person whose hands built it. Show me a better definition of unsung heroes. Every Friday at 7:30 p.m. on Weekend Edition.
Sonadol Extra imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli kupambana haraka na maumivu ya kichwa, mwili na hata meno. Sonadol Extra, hakika maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them. William Shakespeare. Registration for InterSwitch Spark Kenya 2.0. To switch a future, Visit www.interswitchspark.com and register your best 6 Form 3 students for a chance to win 2.5 million Kenya shillings worth of university scholarships, including monthly stipends, and the bragging right as the best STEM student on InterSwitch Spark Kenya 2.0 Science Competition, powered by InterSwitch, transaction solutions you can depend on.
Working from home? No problem. Fiber Home has you covered with the fastest and most reliable internet speeds. Get connected today. Kazi lazima iendelee.
Welcome back. You're watching NTV News at 1. My name is Debarl. Now let's all head over to Trans-Nzoia, where the county has beefed up its security measures, issuing a warning to truck drivers who are sneaking people into and out of the counties. This is following reports of drivers defying the government's stipulated measures to help curb the spread of the coronavirus. Security officials have stressed that the arrested drivers will be put under forced quarantine. Trans-Nzoia Governor Patrick Hayemba urged Kenyans to adhere to the restriction of movement and stop traveling to rural areas. The county has also launched a sanitizing booth to help curb the spread of the virus.
Subiri kidogo tumalize haya maneno na utasafiri kama kawaida. Ukisaidia kueneza ugonjwa hautaruhusiwa kuwa ukisafiri. Kwa hivyo vumilia usisafiri.
On the international scene, more than 250 Italian nationals in the North Coast region have been evacuated as foreign governments continue pulling their nationals out of the coronavirus hotspots. The evacuees, the first of several groups that is scheduled to leave Kenya or flown out on a chartered flight that landed at the Mombasa International Airport. About 200 Italians will be transferred to Mombasa International Airport for them to catch a flight home. Coastal counties of Mombasa, Kilifi and Kwale have been placed under containment after they recorded a substantial number of COVID-19 positive cases.
It's the first time, I think, in the Kenya history that a lot of people from a same nation is going away from Kenya at the same time. Around 3,000 people who left before, and now more than 500 people is leaving now. And for Malindi economy, it's a big loss now.
And residents of Mutarakwa village in Limuru, Kiambu County, are living in fear on account of landslides that continue to threaten their lives and livelihoods. This is after road constructions in the area and excess land excavations, I should say, have led to the weakening of the foundation of the earth. The residents have asked the government to act and stop the mining of rocks in order to protect their homes. The residents also claim that the excavations are not geared towards the construction of roads in the area, as there are no roads constructed in recent times. They demand that the landowner and the construction companies mining rocks in the area to stabilize the ground.
Watu wa kanzu walikuja hapa wa county, serikali yetu, mimi na wasihi kule kwangu siwezi kukaa kwa sababu nyumba imekwenda. Na mimi nasema kitu, sio kama Murang'a tunajua ni kuporomoka, lakini hapa sio kuporomoka. Hii ni watu wakafanya kazi, ule mwenye contract na wene mshamba ndio wamesababisha hii.
Tumeenda kwa City Council, tumeambia MC wetu, mheshimiwa wetu mpendwa Mwadhi, tumemwelezea na labda sasa tusaidiwe tu, hakuna njia nyingine sababu hata neema tumeenda. Kwa hivyo sasa hatujui kama kuna mabarua ama hatuna.
Over the weekend, tens of Ruai dwellers were evicted and had their homes demolished in what the government termed as illegal settlement on the land that is meant for sewer expansion. Now, hundreds of people claiming to be victims of eviction for both Ruai and Mathare fall NTV lands have invaded the disputed Kenya Broadcasting Corporation land in Matungulu, Machakos County.
Dozens of individuals alleging to be members of Ruai and Mathare Air Force Quarters Association drove into the disputed chunk of land measuring 1,200 acres where they now intend to start constructing new homes. The people were part of dozens of families in Ruai whose houses were brought down by the government as it sought to reclaim about 3,000 acres of land to pave way for the expansion of Dandora sewerage plant in the city.
Uchungu yetu ya kutuleta hapa. Tumekuja sababu tulikuwa tumeshaletwa hapa na PS na tukasema juu pale imebomolewa mahali PS alikuwa amesuggest. Sisi tutajileta hata kabla afike mara ya pili ama kabla yao masurvey wake kufika.
According to Samuel Githinji, who identified himself as the vice chairman of Ruai and Mathare Air Force Quarters, high-ranking officials in the Ministry of Lands led the evictees to the land parcel located east of KBC police station last week, where they were promised that they will be resettled. But the land in question has been a subject of long-standing ownership row between the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and Komarok Housing Society, who have both laid claim on the prime property.
Members wa Komarok hawako tayari kupeana shamba yao ambao wamekaa nayo kutoka hiyo miaka ya zamani.
However, members of Komarok Housing Society, which has been claiming ownership of the land, dismissed the Ruai group and vowed to evict any person or group of people attempting to settle there.
Tumeongea nao na tumewaelezea kwamba waje na mabarua ya kuonesha kwamba wameambiwa waingie katika hiyo shamba hata kama ni sehemu ya hiyo shamba, na vile tumeongea nao wamekubali na watarudi, na wakiwa na barua sisi hatuna maneno, bora wawe na barua ya kuambiwa waingie na ni sehemu gani watatuonesha.
According to police commander for Matungulu sub-county, Kipkemo Kirui, who visited the scene, he said police were not aware of any group of people who are to be resettled in the said land. Kipkirui added that police will only allow anyone to occupy the land once they are served with a legal or reliable order from the government. Judith Cherono, NTV.
E-commerce has taken center stage in the African continent for delivery of goods, with some companies reporting that their home deliveries have gone up by 90%. While COVID-19 has dealt businesses an economic blow, they have also found a silver lining, as there is a surge in demand which wasn't there previously. Many were previously put off by the problems facing e-commerce, such as limited internet access and volatile online security, especially with payments. However, many have now welcomed the platforms. This has had a domino effect on creation of employment, with more drivers being hired to meet the demands of supply. Despite initial fears the virus will devastate the African economies in various countries, the continent has so far recorded low infection rates compared to Europe and the United States. And Boko Haram jihadists killed 20 civilians in an attack on a village in restive northeastern Nigeria as inhabitants prepared to break their Ramadan fast. Insurgents in several pickup trucks fired barrages of rocket-propelled grenades in the attack on homes in Gajigana village as people gathered inside for the evening meal. 14 people were seriously injured and several buildings were destroyed in the attack. Gajigana, which lies 50 kilometers outside the regional capital, Maiduguri, has repeatedly has been targeted by the jihadists. Boko Haram fighters have waged a decade-long insurgency in the northeast of Nigeria that has killed more than 36,000 and displaced around 1.8 million people. Right, let's buckle down to some sports, and we have Ida Waringa standing by. Good to see you, Ida. How are you?
Good to see you too, Debarl. I am doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. Let's get into the world of football, where Bundesliga players will be reminded of the return to play guidelines before next weekend's matches, following violations on the first weekend's resumption of football. Well, Hertha Berlin's players ignored social distancing rules in goal celebration during Saturday's 3-0 win at Hoffenheim. However, the German Football League has assured that the club will not be punished. Now, with none of the other European leagues yet to restart, the eyes of the world are on Germany, and Bundesliga International Chief Executive Robert Klein acknowledged Well, it's good news as English Premier League clubs return to training today, though it will be in small groups, as well as training in those small groups of no more than 5 with social distancing. Sessions must last no longer than 75 minutes for each player. After the project restart meeting with clubs, Richard Masters, Premier League's chief executive, also revealed that a trophy presentation for the title winners at this point, likely to be Liverpool, remains part of the plans. Surprise inspections, GPS tracking, and video analysis are all methods that could be used to ensure clubs adhere to new safety guidance as they prepare for the resumption of the Premier League.
Cheers.
Well, still on the EPL, albeit a bit differently, Chelsea and England winger Callum Hudson-Odoi has been bailed out after arrest on Sunday on suspicion of sexual assault. Police and an ambulance were called to a London address, and when emergency services attended, a woman reported that she had been raped. She was then taken to hospital. Now, the 19-year-old was arrested at the scene. He will return on a date in mid-June as inquiries do continue. Odoi was the first Premier League player to test positive for coronavirus but recovered. The Chelsea player also broke lockdown rules that specify that only one person from each household may meet as long as they remain outdoors and keep 2 meters apart. Well, the effect of COVID-19 on sport was always going to have legal and financial implications, and now some of those are coming to the fore. Scottish club Hearts has threatened to take legal action over its relegation from the Premiership. The Scottish Professional Football League announced that the 2019-2020 season could not be completed due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Celtic were crowned champions for a record equaling 9th time in a row, and Hearts were consigned to the championship after the final standings were calculated on a points per game basis. Well, that does it for sport for now, but much more in subsequent bulletins. I'm Ida Waringa. It's back to you, Debarl.
Many thanks indeed, Ida, there. And of course, that player, it seems everything worse is happening to him, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now it is a Me Too moment, right?
Yeah, you know, when it rains, it pours, they say. You know, just recovered from coronavirus and then end up in such drama. But definitely, we will see how the story develops.
Well, many thanks, Ida. Well, let's just return to Africa beat, where South Sudan's first vice president, the former rebel leader Riek Machar, has tested positive for the novel coronavirus. And Morocco has extended its state of emergency to June the 10th in order to curb the spread of COVID-19.
South Sudan's first vice president, the former rebel leader Riek Machar, has tested positive for COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus. Machar's wife, Defense Minister Angelina Teny, and a number of his office staff and bodyguards have also been infected. Machar has issued a public statement declaring that he is indeed positive and he will self-quarantine himself in his residence for the next 14 days. South Sudan, which is emerging from a devastating 6-year civil war, has so far recorded 339 cases of COVID-19 and 6 deaths, according to the latest figures from the Health Ministry. Although the number is relatively low, only 3,000 tests have been conducted. Aid agencies have been sounding the alarm over a sharp rise in cases in recent days. The Moroccan government has decided to extend the country's state of emergency for 3 more weeks until June 10th. The state of emergency, previously scheduled to end on May 20th, was one of Morocco's boldest measures to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic by restricting the movement of citizens and enforcing social distancing. The extension aims to avoid the emergency of virus hotspots and confirms the country's priority of protecting human lives at all cost. Morocco has recorded 6,930 cases of the coronavirus, 3,000 of which are active. Burundians will vote tomorrow in a tense general election despite a largely ignored outbreak of coronavirus, which is said to be the first major challenge for the new president. President Pierre Nkurunziza, who has been in power since 2005, shocked observers by deciding to step aside 5 years after a controversial third-term run plunged his country into political and economic crisis. While Ethiopia decided to delay its election this year due to the pandemic, Burundi has pushed forward with the vote at all cost, with heaving crowds of thousands attending political rallies with only buckets of water and soap available as a nod to the virus. Burundi has so far officially recorded only 42 cases and 1 death from the virus, but doctors and the opposition accuse the government of hiding the true extent of the outbreak. The government has expelled the 4 top World Health Organization officials steering the response to the epidemic with no explanation. They left the country on Saturday. The past 2 weeks, top Senegalese chefs have been cooking gourmet meals delivered to caregivers in contact with COVID-19 cases in Dakar hospitals. More than 2 months into the outbreak, the country of almost 16 million people has registered more than 2,400 positive cases and 25 deaths.
And restaurants and cafes began reopening in parts of Europe and Central Asia on Monday after weeks of closures. But despite new safety measures, weary diners stayed away in many cities.
Hundreds of people, upset over the handling of the coronavirus pandemic, took to the streets of several Spanish cities and demanded the resignation of Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Spain last Monday began a 3-phase plan to end lockdowns for half the country by the end of June. The lockdown measures initially imposed were among the strictest in Europe. In Portugal, schools and restaurants reopened with caution as the country slowly began to lift lockdown restrictions aimed at stemming the spread of coronavirus. Students in the 11th and 12th years of secondary school and children from daycare centers returned to school, which will operate with new rules such as social distance to minimize the dangers of contagion of the new coronavirus. Restaurants, cafes and pastry shops, which until now could not operate as a takeaway or deliveries, reopened doors, being able to serve customers inside the spaces with safety standards and maximum capacity reduced to half. In the heart of Rome, the Hair Art Sound Salon reopened to customers eager for a haircut after more than 2 months of mandatory confinement. A set of guidelines outlining health precautions for hairdressers, barbers and beauticians has been issued jointly by the Higher Health Institute. The precautions outlined are designed to minimize the risk of COVID-19 contagion in an industry where professionals and customers are in particularly close contact. Bookings will be exclusively by prior booking, during which it is necessary to say what type of treatment is requested in order to optimize waiting times.
And Libya's unrecognized government scored another battlefield victory against strongman Khalifa Haftar, capturing a key rare base used by his fighters in a conflict now in its second year. Haftar, who controls swaths of eastern Libya, launched an offensive in April last year against the capital Tripoli, seat of the UN-recognized government of National Accord.
On Monday, the GNA said its forces had seized the strategic Al-Watia airbase southwest of Tripoli, representing the latest in a string of setbacks suffered by Haftar camp in recent weeks, including the loss of 2 key western coastal areas in April. The capture of Al-Watia comes after a weeks-long siege by pro-GNA forces of the base, where Haftar had stationed aircraft for bombing runs. Haftar's forces did not immediately confirm their retreat from the base. Wolfram Lascher, a senior associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin, said the airbase had been Haftar's last foothold on the western coastal plain. In recent weeks, pro-GNA forces had stepped up airstrikes against Haftar's fighters, targeting their supply lines around Al-Watia. Libya has been in chaos since the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that ousted and killed veteran dictator Gaddafi, with the main fault line in recent years pitting Haftar against the GNA. In January, world leaders committed to ending foreign meddling and to upholding a 2011 weapons embargo. But the UN has warned that both sides have continued to receive arms and fighters.
That's all she wrote. Thank you for your valued company. Have a good one.
Allah